Who wants to play in the World Series of Poker main event?
Everybody does.
Everybody does. And everybody can on americascardroom.com. On July 2nd, there is a huge, maximal 50 seat guaranteed to the main event satellite.
Yes, that's well said.
I did it.
50 lucky players are going to win their way to the main event on America's Card Room on the 2nd of July. You can get there a ton of different ways, starting really cheap or expensive, however you want to do it. Use the code POKERGUYS when you sign up and deposit on ACR for a lot of other cool features as well.
There's also new software features, avatars, 24 tables at once, and straddles.
And a lot of other good stuff too. So get on ACR, get you some poker.
Get you some poker.
It's rare that you get to see a three-way pot where there's action on every street and all three players make it to the river. It's even more rare when Daniel Negreanu, Doyle Brunson, and Barry Greenstein are those three players.
Well, yeah.
But I got a treat for you. It's not that hand. It's Phil Ivey. No, I'm kidding. It is. It's a three-way pot. It's Poker Stars Big Game. That's what it is.
That's what it is.
It's a cash game. There's a lot of action going on here.
There is a lot of action. It's a 200-400 blind structure, so lots of money is going to go in if all three players are going to go deep as they are, and there's going to be some big hands. It's going to be really fun.
It's going to be really fun, and that's probably why Jeffrey suggested it on Twitter. Thank you, Jeffrey. If you have a suggestion, tweet at us, include a YouTube link.
We are going to break this hand down as we go, so get ready for some analysis.
Now, yeah, that'd be great.
Then you get the passport. She won like 63, so all you got to do is win 40.
Piece of cake, right?
40-ish.
Against you guys?
40, 50,000.
But there's still more loose cannons to play, so that number's got to hold still.
Yeah.
It's not.
What did you make it?
2,000.
Tried to make it 4,500, by the way.
Go easy on him. It's only his third time on the show. Doyle, we are pot limit pre-flop.
Barry re-raises to $6,000. Pocket kings for Daniel.
I'd expect to see a 4-bet here typically.
Nope, just calls.
Was that just for TV time, or you really
Yeah, just for TV time.
you got that tough a hand?
I was confused. I have a very good hand.
Yeah, I bet you do.
Doyle's not getting the right odds, but he is in position.
And calls.
I think by not raising, Daniel was hoping to not chase everyone out, but now he's got to play kings against two opponents.
The flop, queen deuce tray, top pair for Barry.
This is exactly the kind of flop Daniel wanted.
Greenstein fires $10,000.
Barry and Doyle both have a piece, and Barry's piece is big enough to lose him a lot of money.
Daniel just calls. And Doyle calls with middle pair.
Even with a piece of this flop, that's a pretty loose call from Doyle.
Unless you get trips on the turn. Barry checks.
Barry's now got the nut flush draw. Daniel will have no idea someone hit this 3.
This is fun. Right off the bat, I have no idea what to do.
He knows with this many players along for the ride, his kings are very susceptible.
I check.
Daniel checks. Doyle bets 21,000.
Something tells me Barry doesn't like this bet, but in this spot, he's going to have the best hand a fair percentage of the time, and with the nut flush draw, he's even less likely to be drawing dead.
Very little hesitation move, but he calls.
Daniel can't really like that bet either, or the call from Barry. He's right to think about this hand, but I don't see how he could get away from it, even if his spidey sense is going off. Like Barry, he's just not going to be beat very often in this spot.
Daniel calls.
Man, three-way pots are so fun, aren't they? They're just different, right?
Yeah.
And it's especially fun for Doyle right now because nobody expects him to have a 3 here. If you go back to pre-flop, Doyle opened to 5x in the hijack with 6-3 suited. That's a little loose, Doyle. I don't know, maybe he was bored. Then Negreanu super under-repped his hand by just calling. Everything's weird and under-repped. It's kind of cool.
It is really, really cool. Don't know if I love the play by Daniel here not to 4-bet. He's basically guaranteeing Doyle's going to be in the hand, add this extra layer of a third player with a hand that really loves to play heads up much more so than against two opponents. And Doyle gets to be in position instead of Daniel getting to be in position for the rest of the hand. So I think I prefer the 4-bet, although his hand is wildly underrepresented.
Yeah, which is nice.
Looks like he has jacks.
Right, and also Barry Greenstein is known to c-bet 100% of the time, so he knows he's getting a c-bet out of Barry. That might be an advantage, too, of just calling here.
That That is absolutely true.
Right.
And we do get a C-bet out of Barry, but
We do.
Barry actually has a hand worth C-betting.
He has a real hand.
For once.
Yeah,
you
for
did
once.
it, Barry.
So Daniel just calling here is probably the right move. And then Doyle makes this somewhat loose overcall.
Yeah.
Although he could always bink a 3 or a 6 or a backdoor draw.
Yeah, he's got 2 backdoor draws. He's closing the action. He's getting a reasonable price, and he can improve. Doyle also has to think a lot of the time he's ahead of Barry, because as we know, Barry's going to C-bet all the time. And Daniel rarely has a queen here. Daniel often has 10s or jacks exactly. I guess he can have ace queen too, but Doyle not only gets to try and improve, but sometimes both guys are going to check to him on the turn, and Doyle can bluff with bottom pair.
Yeah, but he doesn't have to, which is great. But let's get to the turn, because these are very interesting decisions on the turn. Barry's turn check is something that we talked about a lot on our podcast, and upon first inspection, we both were like, that's probably not a good thing to do when you pick up the nut flush draw. But we thought about it a little bit more, and I actually think it's a pretty good check.
When you look at the hands that these guys are supposed to have, not that they do have, Daniel's wildly underrepresented. Doyle, you wouldn't think has a 3 here.
No.
You expect him more to have 4 or 5 suited or a queen.
Right.
After when he overcalls on the flop.
Maybe jacks.
Maybe jacks once in a while, because Daniel is not likely to have a queen himself, I guess. Fair enough. So as Barry, we may think if we bet again, we're just going to lose everyone. And with the nut flush draw on top of a beautiful top, there's not much to be afraid of.
No, and we block all the queens also. It makes it less likely our opponent has queens.
Yeah.
We're not afraid of most river cards. We don't want 4 or 5 to get there, but we also block that from getting there.
A little bit.
So everything is pretty peachy for Barry. We don't worry about too much, and it's hard to get value from worse hands if we bet at this point. So I think it's better to try to get our value on the river. I think a check is really good.
I think so too, although I had to come around to that and we figured it out in the podcast. Now, Daniel's decision is a very interesting decision here. Very, very close. I think it's really fine to bet to get some value out of what is likely a queen by Doyle. Although we might expect as Daniel, if we check, we're going to get that value anyway. Doyle is likely to bet.
Yeah, and Daniel has the same problem as Barry. It's hard for worse hands to end up calling here. It's unlikely that Barry has a queen when he checks here, even though we end up liking that check. As Daniel in the moment, I don't think he believes Barry has a queen.
I wouldn't.
And he thinks maybe Doyle has a queen, but Doyle doesn't have to have a queen here, right? So, and Doyle might fold even if Daniel bets, if it's a big enough bet, if Doyle has something like queen jack.
I mean, Doyle doesn't have to have a queen, but there's not much he's going to have when he's overcalling here, which makes sense besides a queen or a straight draw. Now, he can have a pair with 2 backdoors, I guess. Also. That's reasonable. But there aren't too many of those he can really show up with either when he opens, calls the 3-bet, and here we are.
And Daniel has a lot more to protect against than Barry does, because he doesn't block anything, whereas Barry blocks everything. So we think Daniel betting would make a bit more sense than Barry betting. I personally think it's fine to check, but I think Barry's check is a little bit better.
Yeah, I definitely lean towards a bet from Daniel's shoes here, although he does continue to represent jacks by checking, which isn't the end of the world when Doyle very likely has a queen.
And then Doyle's bet is pretty good, I think, because of the sizing. He bets less than half the pot, which is very small in these cash games.
Yeah.
And it's because his opponents are both so underrepresented, Doyle can't really think they have hands like this that can actually call a reasonable bet. So he has to be able to get called by 10s or jacks or a hand like that. Basically, all 3 of these players have pocket jacks, right? There's 6 jacks in the deck. Everybody has pocket jacks. That's what it looks like.
It's really, really strange how everyone is now underrepresented.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think Doyle has trip 3s. You wouldn't think Barry's got top in the nut flush draw, and you certainly wouldn't think Daniel has kings. Fascinating spot.
Now, Barry and Daniel could both ship here.
Yes.
So that's interesting. Barry could very reasonably go all in with his stack to pot ratio. He only has about 60K left after this call. So he could just move in and hope to get value that way, but he's probably worried that nothing can really call him.
Yeah, like once you move in, King Queen's gonna have a really tough spot to actually call and think you're good. It's just unlikely based on the action. It's possible, but it's unlikely. Daniel, though, has a different spot.
Yeah.
There's more money in the pot now, too. Like a lot more than before. Barry puts another 22 grand or something in.
21, yeah.
Well, close enough.
Yeah.
So I think as Daniel, depending on what the effective stack is,
Yeah,
we know how
know.
deep Barry is. We're not exactly sure how deep Daniel and Doyle are. They're another 100K deep behind. There's 150K deep. I think we should only call.
Yeah.
But if we've got like 70, 80K left, I think shipping is actually better for Daniel because there's so many bad cards in the river where A, we either can't get value, or B, we're going to lose because someone's going to catch up.
We usually expect to be ahead with kings here. Unfortunately for us, Doyle has the old 3-6 suited.
The river, 4 of diamonds giving Barry a flush.
Barry called the turn hoping to hit a diamond. Let's see if he still likes it.
Calling.
He does. Barry's all in.
Those are pretty much the kings of comedy at this point.
Daniel folds.
Let's card I didn't want to see.
I don't really see Barry making this play without a flush or a full house.
I call it.
Doyle calls and sees the bad news.
What else was on?
You turned a 3, Doyle? If I raised the flop, I would have lost the whole thing.
Daniel is 100% right. Even though I kept advocating for raises upon raises, Daniel lost the absolute minimum he could ever lose with kings in this hand.
Small ball, baby.
Yeah.
It's the Daniel Negreanu way, and this time it really worked out for him because he was crushed in every direction.
Yeah.
And it ended up being not a big loss for him considering the strength of his hand. Now, he folds the river, which we don't need to talk about too much because it's pretty rudimentary when the diamond comes in. Barry definitely has diamond draws in his range. Specifically, ace-king and ace-jack of diamonds feel more likely than ace-queen of diamonds, but they really feel like a big part of his range, especially once he decides to shove into 2 players on the river.
Absolutely. I mean, what else is he shoving with? Okay, maybe he's shoving with 2 aces with the ace of diamonds, trying to get value out of a queen that he is afraid is going to check back.
Yeah.
But when Daniel has Doyle behind him as well, there's just no decision but to throw your hand away here, even though you're getting, in quotes, a great price. Doyle can have anything. Doyle can have a full house very reasonably.
Yeah, I mean, it's not super likely for him to have a full house, but it is possible.
Yeah.
So this is a very strong move in, but we both think that Barry did the right thing by moving in. He only has half a pot bet here, and it's hard to imagine a worse hand doing the work for him, and he's going to call it off if he's losing anyway, so he might as well try to get value out of a queen or kings or a hand like Doyle has.
It's tough because as Barry, you're just thinking like, no one's ever going to call, like, what? But if I check, it's just going to check through. I might as well take a shot at getting called.
Maybe Doyle would have ended up betting anyway,
Maybe.
But it looks like Barry got to get that value either way, so
I don't know if Doyle's going to bet.
I don't know if he is either, and if he's not, that means this was definitely the right move.
Absolutely.
For sure the right move, because Doyle did seem pretty unhappy about this card. Listen to him here.
That's a card I didn't want to see.
So yeah, maybe this worked out perfectly for Barry, and he did the exact right thing.
So then the question really becomes, should Doyle call this spot?
Yeah, and it seems like, oh, he's got trips. Of course he should call. And in a way, you're right, but in a way, you're wrong. Because Doyle has the most flushes in his range of any of these players because he closed the action pre-flop after the 3-bet. Daniel only has like ace-queen of diamonds in his range, and because Barry 3-bet and he cold called, right? But
Yeah.
Doyle has all of his opening range that he then has to overcall. Doyle can have queen 9 of diamonds, queen 10 of diamonds, queen jack of diamonds, king queen of diamonds, ace queen of diamonds. We know from Barry's perspective he can't have those, but in Doyle's mind he can, right?
Right.
So that's a bit of a problem when we're deciding to choose a 3 as a calling hand when Barry is so strong.
Yeah, and also, do we really believe Barry's going to ship into 2 players with these weaker hands, the big 1-pair hands type things? Because that's really all we can beat, right? We don't think Barry's bluffing here. He
it would be
called
weird
on the turn. Right? He would have moved in on the turn if he was bluffing, right?
Right. It would be weird for him to be bluffing here.
Yeah, it seems very, very unlikely. So if he's not bluffing, we can beat very, very little value. All we beat is the value of trying to get value from a queen, which I don't know that there is any, because does Barry really expect to get called by a queen if he ships here?
I don't know.
I don't know, man.
Maybe Barry would do this with 2 aces with the ace of diamonds, because then it makes it a lot less likely that Daniel specifically has a flush, right?
Maybe.
So maybe he's like, I got to try to get value because I'm under-repped by checking the turn with my aces. And maybe that's going through Doyle's head. And he is getting almost 4-1, so he only has to be right about 20% of the time.
That said, Doyle's going to be walking back to Texas if he keeps making calls like this.
So you think it's a bad call?
I think ultimately it's probably supposed to be a fold, although the price is extraordinary.
Yeah. It is a good price, and we have trips.
And it's a cash game. It's not a tournament where, you know, oh my God, I'm James Opes, and if I call here and I'm wrong, I'm screwed. I'm Doyle Brunson. I just reach into my pocket. Those are 2 really good reasons to call.
So Doyle must think that Barry plays overpairs this way some of the time in order to justify this call, because if Barry doesn't, I can't imagine a possible bluff in his range the way this hand played out.
I mean, Doyle's played with Barry for years upon years, so Doyle knows if Barry's bluffing here sometimes or not, and he also knows if Barry's got some overpairs or not. So ultimately, maybe we should trust Doyle.
Yeah.
That he's calling with a bad kicker with this 3 and knows that that's good enough against Barry's range on this board with this price.
It just feels like the nut flush so often, though, the way that Barry played it. And from the outside looking in, it looks like Doyle made a lot of really loose decisions in this hand, and it ended up costing him.
It almost worked out. All right, YouTube verse. What do you think? Should Doyle be calling here on this river or not? Should Daniel be raising the turn or not? Should Daniel be raising pre-flop or not? Also, all the other decisions.
Yeah, tons of stuff.
Let us know what you think in the comments. We're going to respond to our favorite ones right up there. If we haven't responded yet, that means there's nothing to click on.
Yeah.
If there's nothing to click on, that means we haven't responded
That's all the things.
yet.
That's all the things.
I've
Yeah.
already said
That's correct.
I'm saying it again.
So, yeah, Doyle ended up making a call that we didn't particularly love, and it was probably just because it was a cash game that he was able to make that call.
Sure.
Cash games are different than tournaments. He's probably folding in a tournament, right?
I gotta believe.
If you want to find some more scary spots like Doyle had on that river, check out our cash game breakdowns by clicking right up there.
Absolutely. Also, if you like the analysis or you're interested in this analysis, we spent a good, 40 some odd minutes talking about this hand on our podcast, also called The Breakdown. Check that out. Check it down,
Check
too.
it
down, and then check it out
Yeah.
at your favorite podcast aggregating app or
Nice.
iTunes, whatevs.
All the aggregation.
All the things, check it out for sure. And also, if you like this video, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel.